I'm going to give it about one more minute to see if anyone else will join us. Okay, it looks like our waiting room has died down a little bit, so we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. We are very excited to show you these new updates that we have rolling out. Go ahead and take a few moments to review our objectives for today's session. As you can see, our focus today for this session is grounded in better understanding the 2022-35 ELA Guidebooks units updates. We will take time today to review the updates and show you how to access the materials. Our objectives today are grounded in our larger department priorities and goals. We ensure every student is on track to a professional career, college degree, or service, provide the highest quality teaching and learning environment, cultivate high-impact systems, structures, and partnerships, remove barriers, and create equitable, inclusive learning experiences for all children. Develop and retain a diverse, highly effective educator workforce. Our work is grounded in our department's beliefs. Children are our highest priority. Families are our partners. Educators are valued professionals. Graduates must be ready. Equity matters. Choice expands opportunities. Schools are invaluable to communities, and our future is bright. Now let's get familiar with our agenda. We will begin with why the 3-5 ELA Guidebooks units have been updated. Our ELA goal remains for all students to read, understand, and express their understanding of complex grade level texts. With this in mind, we strive to create and maintain a powerful learning community, build student knowledge about substantive topics and meaningful texts, provide optional supports to help all students access complex texts, and do this all within a coherent system of instruction and assessment. Before I move forward, are there any questions about our why? If at any point you have a question, go ahead and send it to us in the chat or unmute and pause me if you need to. Next on our agenda is the innovative design. While keeping our ELA goal in mind, we have provided these updates for students to build understanding and knowledge through text sets, compelling questions, and integrated writing activities throughout each lesson. The innovative design of the units positions students to explore central questions, examine texts by diverse authors in substantive topics, engage in varied reading, speaking, writing, and presentation opportunities, and experience integrated instruction and assessments, leading to a comprehensive ELA experience. There are 4 parts to the innovative design. Throughout the ELA Guidebooks unit, students establish, build, and expand their learning community by working collaboratively and independently. The students build knowledge systematically about substantive topics through related text sets that represent a diversity of authors, characters, and genres. Through the innovative design, there is also the opportunity for choice and flexibility. Each grade level for grades 3 through 5 have 5 units that are arranged into 3 complexity levels, and these levels correspond to the Writing Revolution's writing progression. At the program level, district and school leaders choose the units to include for instruction. Systems should choose one of 2 level 1 units, one of 2 level 2 units, the only level 3 unit available at this time, and end the year with the application unit. It should also be taken into consideration the modes of writing represented in the culminating task for each unit. More flexibility has been included in the ELA Guidebooks lessons by offering optional supports and extensions for teachers to implement as needed to cater to the array of their students' needs. Additionally, the application unit will give choice to districts, schools, teachers, and/or students by providing writing prompts with a variety of writing modes. To understand the updated structure of the units, review this graphic. Each unit is separated into sections of lessons that include core and optional activities. The final piece of the innovative design is a coherent system of curriculum-embedded assessments. Assessment is accomplished through 3 instructional practices that include the following: monitoring with student look-fors, diagnosing with section diagnostics, and evaluating with the culminating task. This information can be found for each unit in the evaluation plan. Before I move forward, are there any questions about our innovative design? Next, we will take a dive deeper into the evaluation plan and assessments. Take a moment to study this graphic. What do you notice is different about the updated assessment approach? Please unmute or add to the chat to share your thinking. Do I have anyone that's willing to unmute and share what are you noticing about this graphic?
So one thing I would say is different are the optional activities.
Yes, we do have optional activities that are added into the curriculum now. Thank you. In the chat, I see that there are section diagnostics as well. The assessment path for each unit can look different from classroom to classroom. With the built-in optional activities, teachers are able to choose which optional activities would best benefit their students. Every unit includes lesson look-fors for monitoring student progress. section diagnostics to assess student growth throughout the unit, and a culminating task to evaluate overall understanding of the unit. So what used to be a very sequential linear path can now look very different with choosing to use those optional activities throughout. Monitoring student progress is embedded into the daily curriculum with student look-fors, which are knowledge-based and skills-related. The lessons in each section are designed to prepare students for the section diagnostic by building content knowledge through reading, writing, and having discussions about complex texts. By monitoring how students are responding to the activities with the lesson look-fors, teachers are able to make informed decisions about which optional activities to include in the lesson and which in the moment supports to use. Each lesson has 2 overall look-fors that assess student knowledge in a standards-based skills. These look-fors are designed to help teachers map out their daily activities for each lesson they teach. I have included an example of look-fors from the Because of Winn-Dixie unit. So as you can see, this is from the very first section of Because of Winn-Dixie, and there is a knowledge-based skill, a knowledge-based look-for, and a skill-based look-for. The knowledge question asks, can students explain why Fern felt the need to help the piglet her father was going to slaughter? And the skill, can students provide evidence such as details and examples from the text to support their explanation? Section diagnostics are included in each section, and they are designed to assess student understanding of the section and to provide insight to teachers about their students' preparedness in relation to their ability to complete the culminating task. Teachers should review student responses in discussions using the diagnostic checklist and/or exemplars. Optional activities can also be used in the following unit section to help students better access the knowledge needed in the unit to respond effectively to the culminating task. The materials that are linked to the units on the Louisiana Curriculum Hub have both student-facing and teacher-facing copies, and you will find the checklist, exemplars, and rubrics needed for the section diagnostics on the home page for the unit under assessments. This is another example, and this is from Section 1, Lesson 3 of Because of Winn-Dixie. The section diagnostic question asks, how does the unusual relationship between Fern and Wilbur teach us that animals and humans can be friends? Each of the section diagnostics is also going to be provided with a culminating task connection for how you can assess your students to be able to answer that culminating task. So the connection here is that students demonstrate their understanding of the relationship between 2 characters and how that relationship benefited not only the animal, but also the human. Students also demonstrate their ability to pose and answer questions, develop ideas based on evidence from the text, and listen to the ideas of others to confirm or challenge their own thoughts.
Hey, Allie, I have a question from
Sure.
Kim. She said she's been looking at the Because of Winn-Dixie plan and had a question about the diagnostics being mostly or are all writing prompts, and how will that prepare students for the LEAP tests, part A, part B questions?
So one of the updates that you're going to be noticing in a little bit is going to have a lot to do with those part A, part B questions. We do not have the cold read task anymore included into the unit itself. So that is going to be one of those updates that you notice is also taken out. These units are not developed with those set questions in mind. It's going to be based in reading, understanding, and getting students to discuss and write. When they are in these units, we're focusing in on them working through the knowledge and skills that they will be able to use in order to answer those questions that are Part A, Part B, multiple choice, multi-select. So if those are some practices that you would like to include, that would have to be provided in your classroom for your students.
Okay, so just let me clarify. So I would need to find some additional resources to be able to practice with my students for Part A and Part B questions, is what you're saying? Am I hearing you correctly?
So not necessarily additional resources. You could definitely use the texts that are here, as well as the cold read task that has been previously used in the units as some resources, but you could definitely build in those types of questions for students in your classroom.
Okay, thank you.
Allie, you had another question coming in that I think is similar about this. Are the slides going to be updated or the updates supplemental? Brooke, I don't know if you wouldn't mind clarifying that question about the supplements and what teachers need to be able to do.
So I wasn't sure if like the actual lesson has been updated and or if it's a teacher or a sub or whomever we're working with, or they to decide when to go, kind of like the diverse learner support. So do they need to decide when to pull this in, and is it similar to the language links that were provided for 6th through 8th grade the past few years, or is this the actual chords or have been updated?
So these are the actual units itself. The units are updated. So the units that were released in 2018 or otherwise named 3.0 are not going to be the same as this new information. These are all updated lessons and units. Now, as far as when you're talking about subs or guest teachers that are coming into your classrooms, your teachers, whoever the main teacher is in the classroom, would still have to prepare the lesson and decide those optional activities that they want their student to be able to work through. In a moment, when we get past this section of our presentation, it'll start to make a little bit more sense with where these updates are located. And if I haven't fully answered your question, please pause me again and ask it in another way, so that way I can help you further with that.
I think you answered, because that was my question. I think maybe instead of the word supplemental, I'm asking, are they embedded within the lesson, or is it, or everything you're referring to, is it optional?
Everything is not optional. So there's going to be some core and some optional.
Okay.
And I will definitely, in the next section of this presentation, be able to go more in depth with that.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect.
Also, I'm just chiming in.
Sure.
Brooke, are we referring to like LearnZillion slides? Is that what you're asking about? If they are updating it on LearnZillion? That I think is the question, probably. Like, is LearnZillion updating all these lessons on their platform?
So that's the question out now about LearnZillion. Okay, so LearnZillion has its own product, and they are currently working through how that's going to look with these updates. So we don't have a answer at this moment for that, but they are working on a plan to make sure you guys, if you've already have a paid account through LearnZillion, that you still have access to these updates. You'll also see in the next part of this presentation that we don't necessarily have slides anymore, but through the Louisiana Curriculum Hub, there's something like a slide that will be able to be presented for your teachers and your students.
Will there be
Go ahead.
Will there be an ability to download those should there be internet issues, or are they only accessible through internet access?
So the slides itself, no, are not able to be downloaded. It won't be accessed through Drive any longer. But we do have some other materials that you'd be able to use in case of like an internet down, if the internet's down or there's a some kind of shortage in your bandwidth. But yeah, I'll walk through those with you when we get to that part of the presentation.
Thank you.
Okay. So once you have monitored and diagnosed with your students, the last part of our assessment plan is to evaluate, which is going to be the most familiar to you guys because it's using that culminating task. The unit sections, lessons, and activities all lead to the students having that effective culminating task response. Teachers should use the appropriate culminating task rubric to evaluate student performance and to provide feedback to their students. So here is the example from Because of Winn-Dixie. And this culminating task asks students to read Because of Winn-Dixie and a series of related texts. And they answer the question, why is it important to have friends who are different from us? Students express their understanding of how the friendships Opal builds throughout the anchor text develops the theme of the story. At the end of the unit, students write a literary analysis to respond to the culminating task. And then the students would have access to the rubric. Teachers would have access to the exemplar to be able to set their students up for success. I did see a few more questions come in through the chat, so I'm going to pause right here. Tara, is there something else that
No, Chantel added some links to access to the Curriculum Hub, and then she also noted that anyone who has questions for LearnZillion will need to contact their support.
Okay.
But you've answered all the other ones.
Perfect. Sounds good. Anything else before we dive into the writing revolution? All right, let's go ahead. We're going to be looking at another update. This is probably the most significant and most anticipated update to our ELA guidebooks. And this is going to be that integration of the writing revolution in every single lesson. So there are multiple opportunities for students to engage in the writing activities designed by revolutionaries who were trained by the writing revolution. The activities start at the sentence level and build to the paragraph writing strategically through the leveled ELA guidebooks units. The writing progression chart. So here you will see that we have a chart that levels out the skills of the writing revolution for each level. So the writing progression chart maps out the writing skills that are covered for each grade level. The first time the writing strategy is introduced, you will notice that the activity is core and outside of the unit's content. The strategy is then followed in the next activity using the unit's content. As the students become more familiar with the strategy, the introductory activity becomes optional or it's removed. Level 1 units begin with sentence skills, note-taking skills, and outlining and paragraph skills. Level 2 units continue to build on the level 1 strategies and introduce revising skills. By the time students get to the level 3 units, they are incorporating all of the writing strategies they are appropriately aligned to in their grade level. For more information on the writing revolution, please refer to their contact information. TWR is offering a training that is tailored to the revised grade 3-5 ELA guidebooks units. This workshop series is led by the TWR faculty, and it will provide educators with instructional best practices essential to effectively delivering the writing strategies embedded throughout the revised ELA guidebooks units. If you would like to participate or have any questions specific to the TWR training, please contact the Director of Strategic Planning, Kathleen Maloney, via the email guidebooks@thewritingrevolution.org. There is a training that will be going out in March. If you guys are interested, you can go ahead and get some information from them. And I think this section is going to be the one that answers a lot of your questions. This may be very new to you guys, so please ask me to slow down or stop me at any point if you have a new question. We're going to be diving into the Louisiana Curriculum Hub platform and accessing the updated materials. All right. Kenna, if you can stop sharing your screen, I'll go ahead and share. Oh, I'm sorry. I'll wait. You could share. I didn't do that slide yet. The new units are going to be available on the Louisiana Curriculum Hub, but their accessibility will be different from the 3.5 units that were previously accessed via the bulk downloader. So you will see that the previous method to access the materials was through that bulk download, and you would save all the materials to your drive. You had several folders to organize, and then the sections were separate with lessons and materials. On the Curriculum Hub, you're going to see that the updated pilot units have the lessons, activities, and materials all connected in one place. It's separate with student-facing and teacher-facing materials. The teaching guide is available for ease of planning, and the materials themselves are downloadable. So now I'm going to share my screen, and we are going to look at the Curriculum Hub together. So in the chat, you have links. There was the link dropped for the Louisiana Curriculum Hub. This is going to be the landing page. Oops, sorry, I didn't mean to click on that. And you'll see that the grade levels are all here listed out for you. I'm going to go ahead and click on 3rd grade. And you're going to see it both ways for right now as we roll out these updates. So the new units are going to be posted in this blue section here. The old access is down here at the bottom. So these are the bulk downloads at the bottom, but we want to access the new information. So I'm going to click here for Because of Winn-Dixie. When you click on Because of Winn-Dixie, you'll get the overview of the unit. You'll get the central question. You have access to assessments, teaching guide, text, materials, TWR materials, and then all of the sections here on this page. So when you click on assessments, you'll get the evaluation plan. And this evaluation plan is going to include your sample lesson look-fors for monitor. You're going to get your section diagnostic and those culminating task connections for each section for diagnose. And then you're going to have access to evaluate with the culminating task prompt, the rubric, and the exemplar. The teaching guide. These are the teaching notes. So this information is going to give you every single lesson activity in each section, the student side of materials, and the teacher side of materials. This would be what your teachers are annotating in order to teach from for each lesson. So going back to the question about the slides and if the slides are not there, like are they downloadable? It's not something that has to be presented in order for the lesson to continue. We could still continue a lesson without the slides being presented to students by using anchor charts, by using the teaching notes and the anchor text and related text as well. So all of that information is going to be embedded in the text itself with the books in students' hands. You have access to the text analysis. So you'll have a list of the text list. For example, for the Because of Winn-Dixie unit, the only additional text added is the Just Ask, Be Different, Be Brave, Be You. So as these units are updated on the hub, take a peek at the updated text list to see which texts have been kept and which ones have been omitted or updated. We have run into some issues where some texts have gone out of print. So some of the text lists in these updated units had to be updated.
Allie, I have a quick question.
Sure.
So before we move on to materials, whenever you refer to the new, like the optional diagnostic piece, and
Okay.
I think it was in assessments, is that like our teacher, is that also presented as an option for teachers to refer to a specific part of that in the teaching notes or the teacher's guide?
So the assessments, I think you had a couple questions in there, so I'm going to try and clarify it as best as I can. So the section diagnostics are not optional. These are the embedded assessments to help teachers be able to diagnose their student understanding of the section previously.
Okay.
So I've taught my section. Here's the section diagnostic. I'm going to take the data from that section diagnostic and see which students are ready to move on and which students have optional learning opportunities that I need to pull from. That's where those optional activities come in and those other resources. So if a teacher has a small population that they need to pull an optional activity for, they have data to support that.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yes, ma'am.
Was there another piece you wanted me to go back to when I was talking about the teaching guide?
I just didn't know if they had to continue to go back and forth between those two resources, or was that also available in the teaching notes?
So in the teaching notes, yes. So the section diagnostics are embedded like activities. So if it's a question that students are referring to, it's a whole lesson with activities referred around that teachers would have a day to teach and assess.
Okay, thank you.
And also, so the section, excuse me, the section diagnostics now are not going to be like the section quizzes anymore. Are those obsolete, or are they in addition to those quizzes?
The section quizzes, some of them may be able to still be used. When we had to update the text list because of text going out of print, or we're updating text to include a variety of authors and topics, some of them may still work. We did not keep those in mind as we were going through this, and that is actually provided through LearnZillion. I'm not quite sure if they have any plans on updating those section quizzes or not with these updates. They're still in the beginning phases of how they're going to be working with the updates.
Will the foundation supports be updated to
Yes.
coincide with the updated version?
Yes, they will be. So the foundation supports are also, our timeline for that is going to be working on that through the summertime. We wanted to get these updates out to the field first, and we're going to be working on those foundation supports to be able to support using the science of reading. We know we are going to be updating like the vocabulary tasks and the fluency tasks as well in the diverse learners guide. So we're going to have quite a few more updates rolling out once we get these updated units out to you guys.
What is the anticipated date? I'm Cheryl Brewster from Iberia, and we're concerned about the rollout and being able to have an opportunity to dissect the guidebook units and be able to order the ancillary materials that coincide with those units in time for the start of the next school year. So what's the date?
Yes, ma'am. That question has been coming up a lot. We are going to have all of these units released in April. So you will see that on the curriculum hub that these units are going to be updated there and in our comms as well. So through the teacher leader newsletter, we're also communicating when these units are going to be posted.
Thank you.
Also, American Reading Company and Xanadu, we work very closely with them. So as far as ordering, they do have as up-to-date information as we have ready to deliver to them for your ordering needs. So if you have any questions as far as ordering, you can reach out to those vendors to help you with that. Now moving on, oh, go ahead.
I was just saying thank you.
Okay, no worries.
Allie, there are some questions in the chat before we move forward.
Okay, perfect.
So I did move forward with adding the one pager that we've shared pretty widely that gives you an overview of all of the units. So maybe for those of you in the audience, that may help you navigate some of these updates. But the first question, Allie, was in regards to a list being distributed that shows the additions and omissions of text.
So the updated text lists are going to be available on the hub. We do not have a list that shows which ones have been added and which ones have been omitted. That has not been created, but the old text list, or I should say the previous text list, is still available in that bulk download that you could definitely do some cross-reference with that.
The next question was in reference to the extension tags. Tara went ahead and noted that the extension tags as well as the cold read are no longer in the units.
Yes, the cold read task and the extension task have been taken out of the units, but if that's something that you still would like to use, you could definitely use that in tandem with these updates. They're just not included in the scope and sequence of the units. Sometimes in some of the units, the text that was used in the cold read task may have been added into the unit to be used in a lesson. So that would cause a little bit of an issue if you're using that as a cold read. And the extension tasks, depending on the unit again, some of those extension tasks have been included in the unit lessons. They're just not the extension task anymore. It's just part of the actual lessons.
Thanks, Allie. There's another question about the connection to these updates in the innovative assessment program.
Whoever asked that question, can you elaborate on that just a tiny bit?
Yeah, yes, my name is, sorry, I'm having trouble with my camera. I'm Emily Howell. I'm the ELA facilitator from Lincoln Parish Schools. And we are part of the Innovative Assessment Pilot. And I'm sure, I don't know if any other parishes on this call are, but that's going to be one of our teachers' first questions is, are these assessments and the progression of lessons aligned with the innovative assessment?
Yes, ma'am. We are working very closely with the assessment team that is in charge of the innovative assessment. And they asked us to weigh in on the content and the excerpts that are used for the assessment, as well as the questions and skills that are asked. So there is a very close connection to the content team and the assessment team through that pilot.
It looks like there's another question about the practice for Part A and Part B questions. So can you just reiterate what you said previously, Allie?
So in the unit, there are no questions that are already developed for Part A and Part B. So if that is something that you are looking for additional practice with your students, you can utilize any of the assessments that were used previously in the previous guidebook units. Or you can choose to build out your own Part A, Part B questions or multi-select questions with the texts that are included in the unit or the related texts that are used to support knowledge building.
One last question.
Sure.
And I may be able to answer this. The question is, will school continue to serve as a PD provider for the updated 3.5 guidebooks, or will TWR provide all of the updated training for guidebooks?
So we do. You can go ahead.
Yeah, so all of our PD providers have been updated about what's going on with our updates. And so they will have an opportunity to resubmit their what they already provide to the field. And it was going to be kind of like a special session, so it can happen prior to school starting. There is like a line in the concrete, how I describe it, for what PD providers can discuss in regards to TWR. And basically that just means they can't like teach things like because but so, and how to create strategies for that. That's something you would have to reach out to TWR in order to get that information and professional development about.
All right, and one last one, Ellie. They're asking if they're going to have anticipated student responses and look-fors for like answer keys for the discussions and questions.
All right, so that's a great segue onto materials. So I am going to, if I don't fully answer this question, please continue to add it to the chat or unmute. But when you are looking at the materials are going to zip into a file onto your computer, and you're going to see that you have student materials, teacher materials, and reference guides. So as far as in the previous guidebooks units, we're used to seeing the look-fors as being an anticipated response section for teacher notes. That's no longer the use of that term look-fors. When we're thinking of look-fors now in these updates, that's going to be the knowledge and skills that the students are using in that lesson. So the anticipated responses are going to be embedded in these teacher materials, where every student material has a teacher material attached to it, and as well as some guiding questions provided in the units to help teachers steer students through a discussion as needed. So, and then also TWR is separate from our student materials. If you order them through the Xanadu, you can order them in a compiled book of the LDOE materials and the TWR materials. Digitally, they're separate. Again, when you click on it, you'll get a zipped file, and you're going to get the anticipated responses all filled in for you, as well as those student-facing materials that are left blank for the students to fill in. Now that's going to make a little more sense as we go through a lesson. So when we look at this main page for Because of Winn-Dixie, I'm going to go ahead and select section 1. When you click on section 1, you'll get the overview. You'll get that section diagnostic, and then you'll see all of the lessons that are included in section 1. I'm going to go ahead and click on lesson 1. When you click on the lesson, again, you're going to get an overview of that lesson, and then you're going to get those lesson look-fors right here on this page, and then a list of all of the activities that are included in that lesson. So in lesson 1, there are 7 activities. Now you'll notice that not all of these activities are core. The core activities are the activities that teachers cannot skip. These are the ones that have to be implemented in the classroom. However, you're also going to see the optional activities that are included. These are the ones that the teachers can choose to use depending on their specific population in their classroom. The open circles denote that optional activity. The closed circles denote it as a core activity. And then you can also see the anticipated amount of time it would take to complete the activity. This is the part that is like the slides that you're used to seeing. So when you click on the activity, on the left side, you're going to see student-facing materials. On the right side, you're going to see those teaching notes. Now, we don't want the students to be able to see the teaching notes when it's presented to them. So there is an option to expand the student side and cover up that teaching material, the teaching notes. You still have access to the materials as needed, and you still have access to the directions. Now, I'm going to progress through this lesson using the arrow at the bottom to go to the next activity. As you can see, the next activity comes up and I'm able to progress on with the lesson, and I would use my teaching guide as my teaching notes to be able to teach in front of my class. Just like the slides before, you didn't have those speaker notes at the bottom presented. So you would continue to progress through. And then there is where we get to that TWR activity. Now, the TWR activities are scaffolded in themselves to where it's going to have more than one slide that gets you through the activity. You'll notice that because these dots on the bottom of the screen show up. In the previous activity, we didn't have any dots, so we know that we can progress on without changing the slide. For this TWR activity, in order to finish it, I would click on each of these circles to be able to go through that scaffolded activity with my students. And then once I've progressed through that final circle at the bottom, I could go on to the next slide using that arrow. And then as I continue going through, here's another example where it is a TWR activity. I would progress through using my circles, teaching the lesson, and then I would go on to the next activity. Last TWR activity included here. Again, progress through the circles. I'm out of arrows at the bottom, so that's how I know I have gotten to the end of this lesson, or I can look at the top and see that that circle is completed. I'm going to pause right here. What questions do you have? What do you want me to go back to? Let me know what you need from me.
Hey, Allie, I got a message from Christine Aber. She asked that, well, she noticed that some of the optional activities are repeated, like for instance, 3 times in 7 lessons. And she wanted to know if there was a strategic repetition cycle.
So the optional activities, can you give me an example of which one you're talking about?
Yes, Allie, I'm looking at the Birch Bark House unit, and I noticed in lessons 1, 3, and section 2, lesson 1, the same activity appears. It's a writing revolution piece, and it's on sentences and fragments.
Are you looking at activities 3 and 4?
Let's see. In lesson 2 is optional activity 4 of section 1.
Oh, lesson 2. Sorry, I was in lesson 1. So section 2, lesson 2.
So it's, I'm gonna try to say it again.
No worries.
That's okay. Section 1, lesson 2.
Section 1, lesson 2.
And it's activity 4. Yes.
Okay. So thank you for bringing this up. I had mentioned this a little earlier, but this is right where you would see it. So when the activities and strategies are introduced for TWR, they're first introduced as background knowledge outside of content. So when we click on activity 4, you will see that the content here, we're in Birch Bark House, so it has nothing to do with Louisiana, but we have Lafayette is the city in Louisiana. So this first activity is optional because it gives teachers an opportunity to show students sentences and fragments again, or if they don't need it, they can skip it. Now, the reason it's repeated in 5 is because we want them to practice this skill with the content in the unit. So that is why you see that activity again, but the content is different in how it's presented for students. Does that answer your question?
It does, but then the same optional activity is again presented in lesson 3.
Yes, so those optional activities, the content behind it, it's all background knowledge. So it's not going to be different background knowledge for
Okay.
each one. So every time that background knowledge is presented, it's going to be that same example. And we anticipate that if a teacher has to go through it as an optional activity, they won't have to continue using that one optional activity throughout, that they can start using the content as part of the lesson rather than that optional out of content example. So that out of content example, you are correct, is the exact same every time it's in there as optional, but we anticipate teachers not needing it for every single student, every single time it's in there.
Perfect. Thank you for clarifying.
Hey, Allie,
No
I
worries.
have one more question for you. If someone asks, could you please repeat the information about the units being leveled again?
Sure. Do we have that document handy? That we
Yes, I can drop
have?
it.
Thank you. There's a document that's going to be dropped in the chat, and I'll go ahead and share my screen and talk through that for a second. All right, let me know when it's ready.
It's ready for you.
I don't see it in the chat, Tara.
Oh, sorry, it sent it to, I had a direct message. Let me send it to everybody.
Okay. I was like, I don't know if it's not
I got you.
updating for me.
All right, there you go.
All right, perfect. So this document that was dropped in the chat, this is going to explain a little more about those leveled units. So if you scroll down, I'm trying not to get you guys dizzy, to page 3, you're going to notice that we have 3 development levels of the units. Level 1 for grades 3 will be either Stories Julian Tells or Cajun Folk Tales. Districts would choose one of these units to teach for their level 1 unit. Level 2 would be between Because of Winn-Dixie and Treasure Island. And then level 3, currently we only have one option. In future developments, we're going to have another option, but for right now, the only level 3 options are Louisiana Purchase for 3rd grade, American Revolution for 4th grade, and Shutting Out the Sky for 5th grade. The 4th unit that is implemented for these updates would be the application unit, which I talked briefly about earlier. The application unit is about 20 lessons, and it's an extension of one of the units that the students learned about through the beginning of throughout the school year. As of right now, Because of Winn-Dixie, the Whipping Boy, and the Birch Bark House are all available on the Curriculum Hub for you guys to review and look through all of those updated materials. Coming in April, the remaining units will be updated and on the Curriculum Hub. Now, I know you guys are getting to the point where you're needing to select the units that are going to be taught the following school year if choosing to use these updated units. And this information is going to help you with that. So if you look at this page 4, we have the culminating task and the central questions included for all units that are available right now. Some of them are still being developed, so we don't have all of the information for every single unit just yet, but we do have the writing modes for the culminating task. So as you can see, level 1 is Stories Julian Tells and Cajun Folk Tales, while Stories is a literary analysis for the culminating task, and Cajun is an expository writing. And then going down, you'll have level 2, an option between a literary analysis or a narrative. Level 3 is the opinion writing. And then the application unit is going to have choice of either expository, narrative, or opinion writing. And that is built out for each of the grade levels in this document. Any other clarifying questions, concerns, comments?
We have a question for clarification. Will the implementation of the updated guidebooks be mandatory or optional?
So it is, we highly recommend you guys use the updated units. The first reason being that we had to update the text due to text being out of print. So like Louisiana Purchase or American Revolution, those two units, if you continue to use the units from the previous versions, those texts are going to get harder and harder to find and get a hold of. That being one of the reasons. Now, we still will keep the previous versions available for you guys to use if you choose to do so. But these updates are here, and this is what all of the materials that are being rolled out from this point forward is going to be based on. So those previous units will no longer be updated, and the new materials will not be able to be used with those older versions. All right, so we have some professional development opportunities coming up. These opportunities are as follows: on February 11th, February 18th, March 3rd, March 11th, and March 25th. If you are interested in joining, more information about this is going to be available in the Teacher Leader newsletters. I know I answered a whole lot of questions, but if you guys have any more, please feel free to continue. We have about 2 more minutes left of our presentation today. But if you have a question that is particular to you or you think of it later, please feel free to email the ELA guidebooks at la.gov, and we will be able to assist you further in answering any of those questions. If you guys are ready, you can go ahead and hop off. We thank you guys so much for joining us today. And if you have anything else, we'll stay on for a little bit longer to be able to answer any additional questions you may have.